Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? Thank you for joining us already. There's quite a few people here, which is great. And I'm joined for this end of season awards finale show about Newcastle United by my dad, Gordon, and my brother, Andy. How are you doing?
Doing fine. Hello, everyone.
Good evening. Yeah, really well, thanks.
Good. Very relieved, obviously, about about not being relegated. So that was fantastic. So,
yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
Delighted. Absolutely amazing.
A little bit more of a reaction there, but you know.
Sorry, I'm just too busy concentrating on thinking what I've written down.
There's no pressure. There's no pressure.
I know.
You just
I don't know.
worry. Right, evening Peter's here.
Hi,
evening
Peter.
Andy.
Hello.
And Mark.
Hello.
And Rachel. Nice to see you here, Rachel. Blake is here. And so is Ranty Bollocks. Great name. Love it.
Yeah. Is that him or the baby?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, before we get into it, Peter's just put this little message I thought maybe worth chatting about. So obviously turning points in the season. There's been a few this season. One being the actual takeover happening, getting Eddie Howe in. And then, of course, the signings and getting Trippier in. And I think, that set the tone, didn't it? For the Trippier coming in first was huge, I think. It really set the tone for where we were heading.
I think what it did was, with Trippier himself, was, yes, it was because it showed the world our intent in getting a world-class player in. But I think what was the internal side of that was Trippier's influence on the dressing room and the players, and that snowballed from there. So it's just his attitude, his belief, and he's wanting to win, and some of his reactions at times were that of a man who was not going to accept that we were going to lose games. It was just that turnaround, that mentality, and it started with Trippier coming in.
Yeah. I love the fact with Trippier that when he got injured, he was still heavily involved. Like that for me was just amazing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay, so sorry, Andrew. Yeah, go on.
No, he only played 11 games, wasn't it? I think really over the whole season, if that.
I think it was fewer.
I don't think it was that many, Andrew. I think it was only 4 or 5, wasn't it?
He played like 4 or 5 before he got injured, didn't he? Then did he play in 2 of the games at the end, or just 1? I can't.
His first one was Cambridge in the Cup. He played Muscat against Watford and Leeds. Then it was the Everton game, and then he was injured against Villa, so it was 5 games.
Yeah, but then at the end of the season, did he play?
And he came back for a couple at the end. Yeah.
He started 1, didn't he?
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah. So Rachel saying the best thing with trips was people saying it would be a huge fee and whatnot, and we were mad for paying that, and it was like 12 million, absolute quality. Been worth every penny, even though he hasn't played that many games. Morgul's here as well. Evening, Morgul. Nice to have you along. Mark, evening. It's been a perfect cocktail, the takeover, how the signings, and I don't think the fans, and in particular War Flags, can be underestimated. We will get into all of that and more as we go through our awards. So basically what will happen tonight is we will just chat about Newcastle, obviously, but we've got a few categories that we'll go through, and we'll try and give an award for each one. There's one that we are unanimous on, but everything else we kind of got mixed views. So I'll put them up, and people in the comments, feel free to give us your views, your opinions, and your suggestions, and then maybe we'll try and come to some sort of consensus over what is the award. So I thought we would start off with a nice one. Goal of the season. So these are some of the suggestions. I'm just going to get rid of that ticking banner just so we can see them. So these are some of the suggestions that we've had. So both of you two went for the same one. Andrew, do you want to explain which one you chose and why?
So I went with Bruno's winner against Leicester.
Yeah, and why was that?
When you're looking at the goal of the season, there's lots of things you can put the kind of emphasis on. Like, is it a worldie? Is it just like a sheer moment of brilliance? What significance does it have? in the season. Like the winner against Burnley, the first win, that kind of stuff is important.
Yeah.
I looked at all that, but I actually looked at this and I thought, well, it was the whole context of what that goal was. It was 1-1, and it was the 94th minute, and we were all shouting, "Keep the ball!" And and it was just that moment of, and all the build-up play was just brilliant. So Target's pass, Willock's run, Joe Linton getting absolutely clattered because they thought he was the danger man.
Off the ball.
Yeah, off the ball. And then the fact that Bruno ran from his own box basically and never stopped and just it hit his head at the right time. And yet the little deflection doesn't really matter. It just went. And then obviously what that then triggered, the celebrations, everything.
There's something about a last-minute winner that especially a breakaway, that it combined two of my favourite things in football: a breakaway goal on the counter-attack and a last-minute winner. And that is like a lethal combination of just brilliance. And one of my favourite ever Newcastle goals was Laurent Robert scoring the goal at Arsenal away in 2001. We hadn't won in London for like 50 games or whatever it was. It was like 5 years or something or more. And we broke away Robert on the counter-attack and he just slotted it in and we won the game. And it was just fantastic. And it just kind of like, there's echoes of that sort of thing.
And for me, it kind of signified the whole culmination of that run of games, all that stuff that we were doing at that point. It was just, we weren't going to be beaten and we weren't even going to drop points. We were just, we were winning games. We were in that kind of place. And obviously the celebrations it triggered and the ground afterwards were just, superb. But there were other moments. I mean, like the Almiron goal, sheer moment of skill,
I mean, there's a few others, obviously, Almiron's goal. So I went for, I actually went for the Wilson against Burnley game. And you talked there, Andrew, about what a goal means in the context of it. That goal was a winning goal, and it was the winning goal for our first win of the season. And it was also just an awesome goal. So they're if people can't quite remember it, basically their goalkeeper dropped the ball. He came to collect the ball, sort of went into his own defender, and I think it was Fabian Schär maybe, sort of spilled the ball out. And Wilson took a touch, which on the face of it seemed like ridiculous because he took it really far wide. So he took one touch really far wide, but he played it into space. He ran onto it and then hit it back across the goal into the top of the net. It was like the only place the defender on the line couldn't get to. It was just such a good finish. And for me, I've kind of forgotten about it until I saw it in the end of season highlight reels that we've all been watching. And it was such a good goal. And hardly anyone's talking about it, but the context of it was huge as well.
I would agree. I mean, it was on my short list. I had that goal plus Bruno's away at Southampton, which was audacious and just ridiculous. People mentioning
that one in the chat.
And I also had obviously the same as Andrew and Bruno's winner. And again, I'll talk about that in a second. But going back to Trippier, I actually had the pleasure today of actually going back through the videos. Being retired, it was quite a nice day just looking at the matches because you forget some of the incidents in these games that have gone. But you're absolutely spot on about the ability of what he did to take the touch and then turn steady and just hammer it into. And it actually whistled past Chris Wood. I was reading in the report. Whistled past Chris Wood into the net.
To rewatch that.
Yeah, but it was just a great goal. But I agree with Andrew, and it's simply because I think that goal against Leicester, I was in the stadium and it was right in front of us. I mean, it started at the other end, directly from the other end from where we were. And like Andrew was saying, in the stadium, we were all yelling, keep the ball, get shepherd it out, go for a corner. And I was a bit worried when Target turned with the ball and thinking, oh goodness, he's going to have to play this now. And then, of course, he finds Willock. And Willock's touch and clipping away when past the defender was just brilliant. And then, of course, we got the cross, which deflected up with Bruno's run. And then you just saw him coming in from our Gallagher. And the header was absolutely brilliant. I mean, he could have headed it at the defender
Yeah, it wasn't an easy finish.
It wasn't as easy as people think.
No, it wasn't.
And of course, it went in the top corner. Schmeichel was nowhere near it, and then of course, pandemonium broke out in the terracing or in the seats, you know, and it was absolutely fantastic feeling, and it changed the mood of the game. I mean, we were selling for 1-1, and whilst that would have been a good result against a good team, I mean, Leicester were probably the best team that we had beaten up to that point in the season.
That was another thing about that, wasn't it?
You what, sorry?
That was the other thing about that. We sort of like, we weren't winning the game. It was 1-1. And then you sort of think, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, Leicester haven't had a good season by their own recent standards. But you sort of think, well, yeah, they're doing Europe.
And remember, they took the lead in that game as well.
Yeah.
So not only had we, you know...
I'm saying it made a statement. That's what I'm saying.
To be fair, though, the game itself, that game was terrible. It was a really boring game of
football,
wasn't it?
It was a great game.
But then people remembered the mad ending. So... yeah, there was a few other honourable mentions. One that, again, I'd kind of forgotten about was Wilson's overhead kick against Palace away.
Yeah.
Which was like, that was an awesome goal. Like, it's such a good goal, but it was one that not a lot of people talk about.
Season?
Yeah.
Was that in the Bruce? Was that in the Bruce game?
Yeah.
I think, I think it was, it was.
Must have been because he hasn't played since.
What was he called? The guy who stepped in for 3 games?
Jones.
Jones was in charge for that Palace game. That was one of his 3 games that he had.
Do you know, it's weird, isn't it? Because the season has been, it's almost like that era up to when Eddie Howe took over. It's like a different part. Even those 3 games with Jones in charge are just like part of the past. And I didn't go back and look at many of them games.
And that's the thing. Just even looking at all of these we were chatting about these moments, you sort of saying, when someone's, how do you pick player of the season? You can only really judge it on something like from January, really. I mean, obviously you don't, but you know, it's the same with a lot of these goals, isn't it? Really. I mean, the Burnley one was really key.
It is that mix. I can't remember who said it. Might have been Ranty in the comments. Said Almiron's was probably the most aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
And it meant a lot, obviously, because it was another win.
What I liked, that goal was brilliant because he was getting a load of stick from Zaha as well.
Yeah.
And he just
then took angry Miggy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And obviously the pass Bruno played to him was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Trippier's contributions is free kick against.
Definitely, I mean, that was another one. I mean, all those goals were great.
So many good, it's amazing how many good goals we've actually had this season.
Yeah. The goal at Leeds.
Shelby,
Shelby's.
I looked at that one today, and it was an important goal. But when I looked back, I mean, that keeper had a nightmare on that free kick because he actually didn't hit it as well as it was accurate, but really, it was a fault.
It's the context of it, though, isn't it?
Pure quality.
Yeah.
It was just such a relief to get a goal like that and win the game, wasn't it? I mean,
it was.
That was the start. That was the start of it all.
Huge that Leeds game just before the international break as well. I think overall, I'd say that the Bruno header against Leicester was probably overall being picked there. So, so I think that's probably the one that we would award that to. So let's move on. So the next category is a highlight from the season, but not the takeover, because obviously everyone's highlight is the takeover happening. So apart from that, what was your highlight? So these were our 3 choices. So, Dad, you went with surviving comfortably, basically.
Yes, I mean, I had it in my head, these other things as well on that list, but I think surviving comfortably was the overriding highlight, because we've said all season that we needed to stay in the Premier League. That was the number 1 aim. And when you look where we were, and all the early videos after Howe took over, that was what we kept talking about, didn't we? We need to survive. We need to stay in touch. We need to survive. And then when we got into mid-January, we were still adrift. And we still only won 1 game going to Leeds on the 22nd of January. Had played 20 games and only won 1. And then to have survived with 5 or 6 games to spare, I just think it's just such a highlight. It's just beyond belief. In all the years I've supported Newcastle, I can never think of a similar run.
To be honest, I mean, we've enjoyed some good seasons. Obviously, we were all fortunate enough to have experienced Keegan in the 90s and Bobby Robson in the early 2000s. And there were some brilliant seasons, brilliant moments. But the back half of this season is right up there, in my opinion. Yeah. It really is.
It's astonishing. I mean, the points that we accumulated, it's brilliant. So that was a highlight.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, it's a good one. I get it. So, Andrew, you went for Arsenal, the home game.
Yeah, and again, context to this one, not just the game, which was just a superb team performance, but the whole event. So before the game, you know, even like 2 or 3 days before the game, we knew War Flags were doing something special. There was all the kind of shots and the coverage, and even the kind of all the YouTubers doing the sort of interviews in the ground, the building the star, putting the gold foil out.
Just on that, if you want to watch a really good video of behind the scenes, go and check Tyneside Life.
Tyneside Life's video is really good.
Yeah, he did a really, really good video.
Yeah, he did.
Behind the scenes with it. It was fantastic.
I mean, you support War Flags as well. If you can afford to help them out, I just think it's absolutely superb.
They're just getting bigger and better, aren't they? It's like you wonder how they're going to just keep getting better, but you know it will. Like,
so there was, for me, it wasn't just the game, but there was obviously the pre-match stuff, which like Sky just tried to ignore, which is amazing as well. Just chatting on about how Arsenal were going to do it or whatever, and then we came out, and not only did we play well, we absolutely obliterated Arsenal and any expectation that were on us or what Arsenal may do. Yeah. We just completely subverted.
And we did it for the full game.
Like, it was a whole game.
There's not many games that I can ever remember where one team dominates it for the whole game.
Yeah. And then after the game, the kind of lap of honour, appreciation stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, and if you watch every kind of like, if you follow the YouTubers and the podcasters, like everyone was going, "Oh, it's the best night I've ever had in St James's Park. It was amazing," and and it meant nothing. You know what I mean? Because it was like, you know, we were safe. We weren't getting a European place out of it. But
I suppose in many ways that Arsenal game was the culmination of the previous 4 months, wasn't it? It was everything coming together in one night, and from the flags were better. The atmosphere was raucous beforehand, and we actually terrified Arsenal. I mean, you could see visibly they just couldn't cope with it, the intensity of that night. And I mean, the goals were good. I mean, we just when the ball came. The funny thing is, most of us in the stadium thought Wilson had scored, and I didn't realise that he hadn't scored until I think I read it the next morning. It was
everyone on the telly thought he'd scored as well.
To be fair, I didn't realise he hadn't scored.
To be fair, he kind of celebrated like he'd scored.
He just didn't want people to touch his tooth. That was So lots of people agreeing with Arsenal being. It was amazing. Like I wasn't there. I should have been there, but I wasn't there, unfortunately. And even on telly, it was amazing. So I think I'm going to regret not being there in the future, because I think it was like you said, that it was a culmination of the whole season. It was bringing everything together. Yeah. It was the perfect ending for this group of players and manager and owners, and it was just absolutely amazing.
And nobody wanted to go home.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it was just incredible. And actually seeing the owners do the walk around the pitch as well was just mind-boggling, really. I mean.
Yeah, well, that leads me nicely to my suggestion for a highlight. So obviously we had the situation this season that whenever we win a game, Eddie Howe likes the team to have a team photo, and he does that really for the benefit of the team and having the pictures around the training ground and all that kind of stuff. But they ended up on social media, and you know the fans love it. Opposition fans get really, really wound up about it, which makes it even better. And it's just brilliant. But what I loved about that, the Palace match, and with the owners being in it, again, we talk about big moments in the season. That was the match where I believe we got onto 40 points. So that was the actual moment when we knew we were safe. We knew for sure we were safe. And again, it probably didn't match the Arsenal atmosphere, but it was amazing still. It was still a huge moment. And just having the owners there in that photograph and kind of being part of it, and they get criticised for being quite, Amanda Staveley and what have you, being public. But I love it. I think it's great. I think they genuinely have the best interests of the club at heart. And I just think that was just a brilliant moment. And I really loved kind of the reaction online and everything. It was a great moment.
It's going to be a great way to troll people in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope they keep doing it next season, the photo thing, because part of me thinks they might not. Like, I don't know. Maybe they'll draw a line after this season and not publish them. So I don't know, but I hope they don't. I hope they keep.
I watched someone with Eddie Howe after the game this weekend, and he's talking about how he keeps the unity and the team spirit and things together. And I suspect that he will actually continue to celebrate after those wins, because I do think.
No, he will.
So I think the photographs will. I think they'll.
No, but what I mean is, will they stop publishing them? Rather than he'll have them taken, because I know that he likes them around the training ground and stuff, doesn't he?
No, I don't see why they will. I think they'll show them.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Let's move on to the highlights. Evening, Jack. Yes, sometimes the YouTube notifications are not amazing. I think. Oh, by the way, going back to that last award, I think. I think most of the comments were about the Arsenal atmosphere, so I think that one would probably be the award for that one. I think if everyone's happy to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to. Well, we won't stay on this one too long, but we have to talk about the whole season in context. And so let's talk about lowlights of the season. So these are the three that we've gone for. Mine was just starting the season with Bruce and Ashley. So. The reason I'm saying that is I really did start this season at a very low point in terms of my Newcastle's fandom. We've had it before, clearly going into seasons where we're disappointed, but this season seemed even worse because we'd been knocked back with the takeover. We'd gone through another summer where it hadn't gone through, and it looked like it was completely dead in the water. And just the realisation of starting the season with Bruce and his crap brand of miserable football, it was so depressing. There was nothing to get excited about. We barely signed anyone. We only signed Joe Willock, didn't we? I think.
Yeah,
that was it. Nothing against Joe Willock. He had a great run at the end of last season, but it was just depressing. And for me, that was as low as it got. That start of that season, and really didn't change until the takeover happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, mine was similar to yours here, because I just all matches under Bruce, and really for all those same reasons. It was just, it was just awful. We were losing games after going ahead quite often and then getting hammered. The West Ham game at home, and there were many others, weren't there? But it was the style of football. It was also Bruce's attitude. He was just. He was cantankerous. He was slagging off the fans. Everything was wrong, and everybody else was wrong but him.
Which was on the reporters.
Oh yeah, It's never good when you've got journalists banned from the ground. That's never a good thing, is it?
And everybody kept saying, "Oh, he's a great guy. He's a lovely guy off the pitch." Well, he might have been, but he was just awful.
That's kind of what exacerbated it. Was like the media sort of gathering around him to defend him. Earlier on, when we talked about the highlight, bit, and someone said, "Oh, it was Bruce being sacked," but they even managed to cock that up because he kind of outstayed his welcome even by about 2 or 3 games, didn't he? He really shouldn't have had the Spurs game.
He should never have had the Spurs game.
No, and so even Bruce leaving was a kind of low light because it was.
Yes, he didn't go away.
Didn't leave well.
Did he? No.
He didn't even leave well with a big check like Allardyce did, skipping out the club to buy a villa in Spain or something. It was just like
what's been interesting, isn't it, over the past few months, is the players coming out in interviews and not slagging Bruce off directly, but sort of by what they're saying, realizing that they're actually slagging Bruce off with his methods and his the lack of fit.
Lots of comments like. Yeah, since Eddie Howe's come in, we really train hard and really organised, and it's just all those things that they don't need to say.
No,
the old manager was useless. They don't need to say it because they can just say how good Eddie Howe's been.
But actually, the way the season's turned out is just massive proof. Because, I mean, like, imagine if he'd got one less point than Bruce had last year or something like that. That would, all of that doesn't matter now. Gone through the points total, finished higher.
Yeah.
Massive, improvement in players, in quality. It's not been about, yes, we did spend a lot of money, but it's not been all the money, It was awful. And I think all our kind of lowlights point to the same sort of thing.
Yeah. And yours kind of, to be fair, it kind of bookends it nicely because mine was like the start of the season. Yours was all the games, Dad. And yours was the Wolves game, which of course was the last match before the takeover. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking about it really. And, it was one of those days where I just was so disinterested in what had happened because you knew what was going to happen. And the fact that actually we didn't lose heavily, it was 2-1, but actually it was such a poor performance. Yeah. It was so dire. And because the takeover wasn't even rumoured really at that point,
no, it wasn't.
It was 2nd October, the game.
Yeah, it was the one we were on. I think I said this on the last one. We were on our way over to Newton Stewart. We were going away for the weekend. There was obviously we went on the Saturday, and then we're listening to the 5 Live as we did, and our match just sounded awful, and we were losing. We got to the place where we were staying and put the television on, and of course the result came in, and it was bad, and we knew it had been grim. The report was awful. Reading the reports on Twitter.
Let me tell you what the team was that day, right? This was the starting 11, right? Darlow, Manquillo, Fernandez, Clark, and Ritchie.
Wow.
Midfield, 5 in midfield, and it was Longstaff, Almiron, Willock, Hayden, and Joe Linton, and Alan Saint-Maximin up front.
That is unreal. That is unbelievable, that team.
Isn't it? And the 3 substitutes that came on,
Jeez.
Murphy, Gale, and Hendrick.
Oh my God. That is, I mean,
it makes it worse.
That is unbelievable. I mean, most of those players have already been phased out.
Yeah. And the injury list, I mean, Wilson was injured. Obviously, Dubravka was injured. Clearly, all the defenders were injured. It was awful. We had 3 points. We'd drawn 3 games. We hadn't won. It was the 7th game of the season. And already you're thinking, well, we're in this. This is going to be a long, long season.
Yeah. I always think, like the away fans who went to Wolves, the reaction that they had. Yeah. That was literally that was the moment. A lot of them were ready to jack it in.
Yeah, it was.
Even some of the away fans, they were. It was just complete. That's how low it had got. Even the away support were thinking, "No, this is not worth it."
That's right. I mean, that day, that evening, when I was scrolling through and looking at the comments from Twitter from people who'd been in the game, and they were just, as you say, and they were going to go. But then the following Wednesday, the world changed. And it came out almost out of the blue, didn't it? Really, it was like incredible. But yeah.
Yeah. Mark's agreeing completely with you there, Andrew. So well done.
That's because I've done research.
I was just about to say, I think we can just agree that the whole up to the October the 7th was the low light of the season. Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe we'll give it to Wolves away because to be fair, that really, really was a very low point for everyone to do with the club. So we'll
it's a good one.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to happier things. Okay, so let's look at an award that I've called Mr. Consistent. So we've got 2 awards coming up. We've got Mr. Consistent and Unsung Hero, and there's kind of a bit of similarity there, but there is a bit of difference as well, I think. So we're talking about consistent performers. I think me and your choice, Dad, is solid. I'm going to start with you, Andrew, because I think this is controversial. So I'm going to let you defend your. I mean, Mark just agreed with you completely on the last one, but let's see if he agrees with you on this. So let's see out of the 3 players that is on the screen now that you chose as Mr. Consistent.
Well, I went with Alan Saint-Maximin. Yeah.
Okay, explain yourself.
Well, I've had quite a nice little bit of a late afternoon doing some digging and research into sort of stats and performances and stuff over the season, which is why my Wolves knowledge was so full on.
How very professional of you.
Yeah, well, someone's got to start preparing for these things. So anyway,
should be Dad. He's retired.
So yeah.
So quite a lot today, and I must admit I wouldn't have chosen Unsung.
No, well, he didn't jump to mind, and so I'll give my reasons. When I was thinking about this, we're looking. Obviously, we've got some other awards that we're thinking of, and okay, you could have the same player winning multiple awards. But the point is, I went and looked at the stats, okay, from WhoScored.com, and they take all these sort of stats about kind of performance level, passes, players beaten for midfielders, all these kind of things that they're built in.
Yeah,
ASM he's made 31 appearances this season, which is a lot.
There was a point, I don't know if it's still true, but he was like he'd had the most performances at one point. I think during the season.
He has most dribbles and all that type of stuff, doesn't he?
He does, but can I just his rating for the game, for most games, his average rating is 7.1 per game.
Okay. It's just an algorithm, though.
It's an algorithm. Yeah, okay. But if I told you the highest ranked player in the league is Kevin De Bruyne, and he comes in with 7.64. Right?
There's lies and statistics, isn't there?
Trippier scores higher than him, but has only played 10 minutes of football. Right? So he's actually one of our only players who scores consistently over 7 out of 10 a game. And he's played 31 games this season. Now, I appreciate he's not been where we've wanted him to be, but what you've got to remember is he was in Bruce's team and he was the best player. And the tactics were hoy up the Maxi and see what you can do. Yeah. That's not been Eddie Howe's way, and he's having to learn a new way, and he's still performing consistently. Now, if you look at, Guimaraes, he gets higher ranks, average ranking than him, but again, he's only played 12 games.
He's class.
He is absolutely class, and in 3 of his games, he's had 9 out of 10 performances, which is just out of this world. But when you look at consistency on that argument,
I know what you're saying, and I will step up for a little bit. I think the debate around Saint-Maximin has been a little bit black and white in a sense. Like it's been, he's absolutely rubbish, or he's absolutely amazing. The truth is, he's somewhere in the middle, and I wouldn't personally say that he's been really consistent. He's had too many games, in my opinion, where he hasn't had an impact, and I think that for me rules him out of this conversation in terms of being the most consistent.
What I would say though is, in consistency terms, if you take him out of the team or the squad, you're gonna there's a hole to fill. And when I was looking at those sort of the level of players who were consistently getting over 7 out of 10, if you take away the teams that finish, the players who play for Champions League teams, there's not many in that band. Now, there's always things he can improve. His attitude's weird, and and coming out and saying he wants to win the Ballon d'Or and all this sort of stuff is it's probably not helping him. But one of the early comments in the video was, for me, he's the first out the door. I think you've got to be careful what you wish for.
Well,
this is what I'm saying.
I'm not saying that he should be out the door, because I don't believe that for 1 minute. And actually, that comment on the screen now, he is a very good footballer, and his ability to carry the ball from one end of the pitch to the other and relieve us of pressure situations cannot be underestimated. No. He can do it really well. I think the frustration is really more about his final ball or his decision to shoot rather than pass at key times. And it leads to a frustration. I think he had a really, really good game on Monday night against Arsenal. It was actually, and it's no coincidence that actually Callum Wilson was back in the side. Yeah. When him and Callum Wilson play together, Maxi is a better player. And I think if he can learn to do what he's done the last 2 or 3 games of the season and build it into that team ethic, then I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's anywhere near our worst player. People who want him out the door, that is just, in my view, it's ridiculous. And I being in the crowd a lot more than either of you were able to this season. Here in the comments, it would, what it's like in the crowd. The people in fact, there was an argument. There was 2 people just behind us, and one was pro Maxi and the other was absolutely dead against. And they were at each other for a lot of time of the season. Just even matches we were winning, there was this argument about St. Maximin. But I think he's a really good footballer. He wasn't my most consistent.
What I'd like to do is be here in 12 months' time, and actually he could win this award.
Yeah.
And the Arsenal performance gives me hope that might happen.
Yeah.
I think Howe might have a plan for him, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Also, the other thing with Maximum is he scored quite a few goals, didn't he, for us? I mean, was he second?
I think it was joint second on.
I mean, I know it wasn't a lot of goals.
So did Bruyne.
Do you know what the biggest concern I have with St. Maximum is when he comes up against better teams? I think we see him play really well at times against teams in that maybe the mid to bottom range. But actually, when you come up against Man City, Liverpool,
that's all our players.
If we get better players in, we might see a bit.
We might see a difference. Yeah.
Right, moving on to yours then, Dad. So, who did you pick?
Well, Dan Burn, I think. Big Dan. Yeah.
Dan Burn.
I mean, I just think he's looked as though he's played in that side all his life. And I think it comes back to what you said earlier, Andrew, about the season really starting halfway through. And we're talking about trying to pick a most consistent player. And looking at that side against Wolves, I mean, it bears no relation really to where we've been in the latter months. But I just think Burn just came in. He just slotted into that back four. I mean, we were told we couldn't play the back four in this league, and we'd get hammered. And that's another credit Eddie Howe that he's got us the way he wants us to be. I think his relationship and work rate with Fabian Schär cannot be underestimated either. That has been linchpin. Adding Matt Targett and the fullback. I mean, it was Trippier, but also Kraft has done a good job in the latter. Yeah. But Dan Burn has been absolutely superb. He's made very few mistakes.
16 appearances, 11 wins.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah,
6 clean sheets.
Yeah. Amazing. And obviously I went for Target. And
Target.
I just think he has been the most consistent. I actually think Dan Burn has been amazing. Don't get me wrong, Dan Burn's been fab. He has made mistakes though in some games. There's been 1 or 2 mistakes with Dan Burn. And I wouldn't say it really concerns me too much because I think he's clearly a step above what we've had at centre-back in the last few years. But it's one to watch next season, whether he can maintain that level.
The weakness in Dan Burn's game is concentration. That's when you read all the sort of details on him. That's his weak. He's not bad at it, but it's a weaker part of his game rather than heading or positional play.
And what I think, go on, finish your point.
Well, I've got here's the stats on both of those, right? So both have made 16 appearances. A couple of games difference because Target signed earlier.
Yeah, he missed a game as well, didn't he? Oh, he missed the Villa game, of course.
So they both made 16 appearances. Burn has 11 wins. Target has 10. They have 1 draw and similar number of defeats, obviously. Burn edges it on clean sheets.
Yeah.
He has.
What I'm saying is, in a game, Target's made fewer mistakes than Burn. Yeah. Not like Burn's not made loads of mistakes, but I just think he's been slightly more consistent. That's
I had Target as my unsung hero. We might come on to that shortly, are we, Ian? Because I think Target doesn't get that credit, and maybe that sums it up. The other consistent one
fullbacks rarely do.
Yeah. That's the point. The other one that I nominated as a consistent, and I was close between Burn and Dubravka, and I've looked back at some of the games. I mean, Dubravka's made a few mistakes along the way, but goalkeepers do. But honestly, the number of times Dubravka has made good saves and the number of clean sheets we've had, you can't. I mean, we said it at the time, if Dubravka had been in goal against Brentford, we would have won that game at home because Darlow was all over the place. But I think Dubravka has come back into that side and has made the position his own again, and I think he's been really, really consistent as well.
I mean, you've got to look at the back four there, and we've played 5 defenders If you take Trippier out of that, because and Clark and the like, because the 5 defenders who've played the most. Do you want to guess who they are?
Well, Cher.
Yeah.
Burn.
Yeah.
Target.
Kraft.
Yeah.
Kraft.
Yeah.
So that's.
Do you know which defender made the most appearances?
What, all season?
Yeah.
Cher.
No, Lascelles.
Lascelles.
Oh, really?
Only one more than Cher. So, but here's the real difference, right? Because I think we'd all agree, because Trippier was injured, the most consistent back four we had was Burn and Cher, Kraft and Target. That was what kind of was on that run for majority of it.
Yeah.
And if you compare Lascelles and Cher, Lascelles plays 26, has 7 wins and 12 defeats. Cher plays 25, has 12 wins and 7 defeats. And I think that's why Lascelles doesn't get the game ahead of Cher these days.
Yeah. It's well worth. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's move on to the next little award, because it kind of there's a couple of players that we're mentioning that kind of come into the next one. So, this is the Unsung Hero Award. So these were our choices for this one. I'm going to start with you, Dad.
Well, it's my target, isn't it? So.
Sorry, I meant Andrew. He's talking about Cher.
Yeah, Fabian Scher's my unsung hero. And again, just digging into those sort of stats a little bit, he's played 10 more games or 9 more games than Burn and Target. So he's been in the team longer. 12 wins, 6 draws, 7 defeats over the whole season, 6 clean sheets. He's
also weighed in with some goals as well.
Yeah.
The thing with Cher is, like, what I've loved about watching him is he was one that fans were questioning, myself included, when Howe came in. It was like, is he actually good enough? And actually, he's proven in the second half of the season, or even more than half of the season, under Howe, that when he's been playing regularly, he's been brilliant.
He's a proper footballer, Fabian Cher.
So this is it. And Steve Bruce,
comfortable with the ball,
doesn't want that. Steve Bruce plays Fernandez. He plays Kieran Clark. He plays the tried and tested, if you like. He doesn't know that, and it just goes to he doesn't know what the best lineup is. Lascelles, I like Lascelles, and he's been a good servant to the club, particularly in the promotion season and stuff. But he can't play the ball, and every time he gets the ball, he wets himself.
He panics.
He panics, and so I mean, Lascelles will score goals from set pieces. He's a big unit. There's all of those sort of things. But in terms of Premier League performances, Cher is just streets ahead because he's classy. He can play the ball out from the back. He doesn't panic. Sometimes he's a little too relaxed. Sometimes, he's by far and away the most handsome footballer we have since David Ginola. Honestly, he's got the whole lot.
Andy's just signed a new contract.
Well, and did you see the picture of him when he signed his new contract? He wore a lovely suit. I thought it was very nice. I think if you look at all the back four and you look at the defenders we've played, Fabian Cher is the difference in the end, because if you look at Lascelles would be
isn't it?
Lascelles would be the pick because he's captain, but actually. But even though Lascelles has had 26 appearances this season, they've been mirrored. One has been in the early start of the season. The other
Andrew's a bit like Statman Dave on the Football on 5 Live. So what the stats on that, Andrew?
You can take the piss if you like, but I think
I like your stats.
Someone's got to do this, and
it's the sort of thing. When I was your age, I was being accused.
I was going to say,
you're trying to build up a faithful following here, Ian. I'm doing you a favour. I'm doing the work.
I'm impressed. I'm going to move on to my unsung hero anyway, because it's a player we've not really talked about at all tonight, and that's Shelvey.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of the fact we haven't mentioned him tonight shows that he is an unsung hero, because he has played. I mean, I don't know if you've got the stats there, Andrew. He has played one of the most amounts. He's got the highest. He's played in one of the. I can't even speak anymore. He's got the most appearances, one of the highest appearances out of all the squad, and yet we don't really talk about him. But actually, again, since Howe's come in, Howe played him every game when he could. Yeah. And his level was just fantastic for that until we got to January and February, and then Bruno came in all the time.
Yeah.
But Shelby was fantastic. Shelby was part of that midfield, though, wasn't it? Giorgio, wasn't it? That was the thing. And that allowed them to get Bruno into the side. But yeah, I think it's a fair shout, Ian. Shelby. I mean, how much stick did we give him on before? Even in that interim play, just after the takeover, and we were talking about he'd be one of the first ones out the door because he's knackered. He looked totally unfit, which he was. But he's so important to that side. And actually, when he was missing for a few of those games towards the end of the season, he was a bit of a miss at times, Yeah. But he's not as prone now to play the Hollywood ball all the time and losing it. So yeah, I think it's a good shout.
So he's how much has he played this season?
And of course, he also scored that vital goal against Leeds.
And he scored against Leeds, the vital goal.
Set the ball rolling.
There you go.
Yeah.
22 appearances, 2 as a sub.
Yeah. That's it. How many goals did he score?
2.
You see, that's my thing with Shelby at times. I think with his ability, he should be scoring more.
Shelby.
One ultimate though, like his passing, his successful pass rate is at 81%.
Yeah, it was far better than it was. Going back, I think
that's probably skewed as well a bit because that'll have dragged him down earlier in the season.
Yeah,
I bet, but. Anyway,
no, I think it's a fair shout.
And then obviously you picked Target. We've talked about Target quite a bit. It's a good shout for an unsung hero. Left backs, they don't really get much of the many headlines today. But I agree because obviously I chose him for Mr. Consistent, and he has been. Every game he's played really well. He's just a solid player.
Really. From the very first time we saw him play, he just seemed to slot into the position, and he was no fuss, good defender, and just got on with it. It was like he'd been there for years.
Will you be disappointed if we don't sign him? Because there's rumours that he might be off.
Yeah, I've been reading that. I think I probably would be disappointed. And I think he'll be disappointed if we don't. But, it's the ruthless nature of football, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it'd be sad if he ends up as second choice left back at Villa again. I mean, look, he's clearly loved it, hasn't he?
How old is Matt? How old is he? Is he late 20s? Or?
27.
I'll have to Google it. 26.
26. 26. So he's not. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I like Mark's shout here for just as a slight different angle on it. The guy who runs, or the people who run the social media accounts, because the social media since the new owners have come in, the social media offering has just been amazing. Been spoiled.
It's just been it's a good one. That.
I think we need to be realistic about who we let go and who we sign. And again, without being sort of, I was mentioning those players that were in that kind of, that high end, consistent, over 7 out of 10 every game. So players are always capable of getting 8 or 9 out of 10 if they have an outstanding day. But over a season, that kind of balance is there. If you take away the top ranked players in the league are De Bruyne, Salah, Son, Kane, Rodri, Cancelo, players like that, right? The highest we've got. Our ranked players are ASM, Trippier, and Bruno. And ASM is number 37. He's our top player who's played consistently.
Yeah, and that's the levels of the league, isn't it?
And that's the levels of the league. And I think if you look at the other players in the league who've scored more than 7 out of 10 consistently, and I've looked at players who've played more than 10 games here. It's players like Eriksen, Ivan Toney, John McGinn, Jared Bowen, Declan Rice, Conor Gallagher, Bukayo Saka, and James Ward-Prowse. They're the kind of players who are consistently playing at a high level over a whole season. And I think that, I'm not saying we should go and sign those players, but that's, I mean, and I don't know anything about scouting clearly, but they would be the people you've got to keep. And it you know, there's a comment there about do we keep like someone like Longstaff? We might have to.
Well,
because he's a good lad.
I was just about to bring that up because Blakey's he'd be disappointed if we give him a new deal. I think part of this is you've got to have a certain amount of homegrown players as well, and I think that's part of the reason Dummett will stay.
Yeah.
It's there's a bigger picture than just getting rid of everyone. You've got to have so many homegrown players. You know, when you consider the likes of like Murphy, probably going to go. I can't think who else there is now who's English, but you know, there'll be players going who are and will need to have a certain. So it's not just get rid of them.
Well, there's going to be Gale, Ritchie, Murphy. These are all players who will probably leave.
Yeah. The reason I mentioned those other sort of players is if you think about it, like those players for like mid-table upwards, West Ham, Arsenal sort of players. If we want to be qualifying for like 7th Europa Conference, 6th Europa League, having a good cup run next year, you had that in your video earlier, you know, all that sort of stuff. We need to be improving the players we've got to be consistent, and over a whole season with Eddie Howe, who knows how that will be. But I think, you know, they'll be looking at players who can come in, maybe not be a regular starter, but can come in and give a performance. I think Sean Longstaff for me does that. End of the season,
Longstaff's done all right, hasn't he?
He does all right for me. Yeah.
What they were saying on, because I was listening to the BBC Newcastle commentary on the Burnley game, and what John Anderson and what's his name, the commentator,
Raisback, is it?
No, I'll come back. No point. They were chatting, and what John Anderson said was that Sean Longstaff is clearly a lot fitter than he was even 2 months ago, and he had a really good game against Burnley. He did okay. He did well enough against Arsenal as well. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because Eddie Howe also, you've got to, and George Colton was talking about this on the Pod on the Time podcast last week. You cannot just ship, 20 players out of the club. It ain't going to happen for a number of reasons. One, because you can't do it, just the physical thing of doing it. Because players have got contracts as well, and you kind of just, expect them, and somebody's got to pay them and all the rest. But the other thing as well is what Eddie Howe was talking about, this, I've got to find a way of keeping the spirit, the unity of the club going into next season, because we've done this on the back of, we had a target to stay up, haven't we? That was the way we've achieved it and building. Next season, we start from scratch, and the goalposts have changed a little bit, haven't they? Because we're now looking, we want to be in the upper echelons of the league, and that in itself will bring different pressures, situations. And as you said earlier, Ian, we will lose games at times, and it's football, but it's progression, isn't it, on and off the pitch, and that's the balancing act.
It is. I would go back to that Wolves game, the team that I mentioned there, and there's players that we mentioned. You're like, Blummer, did he still play for the club? They're the kind of players who'll be going. Darlow will go.
Yes, definitely.
Kieran Clark's going to go. Matt Ritchie, we know, is going to go. Hayden. Hendrick, Gale.
They're all going.
All going to go.
How bad is that
space? Yeah, it's not going to be Willock and Longstaff. It might not even be Miggy. Might be, but there's players there.
Well, that surprised me. Miggy is still
people need to remember is that, and I always refer back to Man City here, not because I think we're going to emulate Man City or anything like that, although there are clearly parallels. But when I've spoken to a Man City fan that I know, he talks about different phases of their development. So he keeps referring to us as being in you're in this phase where Man City were buying decent players that were better than what they had, like the Wayne Bridge phase. And it's like they were never going to be the players who got them to where they are now, but they had to go through that phase in order to get to where they are now, if that makes sense.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. And people need to kind of remember that. It's not going to happen overnight. It can't happen overnight in the Man City was fast, but it's much more than that. because of financial fair play
and also
around that no one understands.
I just think we as fans looking from the outside, we can have our views and we can, have the comments and what have, but that's what I was just about to say. I trust Eddie Howe to make the right decisions, and I trust the club to get it right about who they're buying. Because the evidence I've had over the last 7 months is that's what they've done. And Eddie Howe's stock has gone up tremendously because of the way he's handled what was a very, very difficult situation, not only in achieving the results, but the way he's done it and the unity and the togetherness of the club. And
I think you made a really good point just a minute ago, Dad, about how it's about, and this is what Man City and Liverpool and all the really top clubs do when they're scouting. They don't just scout the players; they scout players who fit the culture of the club.
Yeah,
and who's so they scout the player obviously, but they scout the player's personality, and that's something that happens in like the NFL massively as well. Like over there, a massive part of the scouting in the NFL is this player, has he got the right attitude for this team and this squad?
And that man behind Andrew's shoulder there that we haven't mentioned really, Bruno, he is the fulcrum on which this club will build over the next 3 or 4 years, because he is a tremendous footballer.
Going back to the Man City thing and my friend that I was talking about, he's the Vincent Kompany type player. He'll just be there for the long haul, hopefully, as long as everything goes to plan. Be there for a decade.
And what's amazing about Bruno is he really is, he's all over the pitch. He does all sorts of things in a game. He's just a tremendous player.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the consensus was really on Mr. Consistent and Unsung Hero. I think Matty Target probably got the Mr. Consistent award just on balance. Unsung Hero, I don't know. There's a lot of love for Target, for all of those three, really. Yeah. They're all worthy of it, aren't they? So it's hard to tell. Let's move on. We've got 2 more to go. So we've got our favourite moments. Now, this one was specifically not on the pitch moments. It was like just stuff that we liked that wasn't the players doing stuff on the pitch. So this is what we've gone for. Let me just get rid of that comment. Hang on. Okay, so let's start with Dad. You go for yours.
I went for the forward, didn't I? I just think when we just beaten Burnley, and then we saw that picture on social media, and it was just so unbelievable that you would get that for winning the first match of a season in the 15th attempt. But what it showed to me was the club, the players, and it was brilliant because it wasn't just the team, it was the whole squad, and it was everybody that was there and the backroom staff, and it just sent a message that said, we're in this together, and we are wanting to take this forward. And then of course they've repeated that photograph every time, and people have loved it, and it's been a real that was a starting point of something which I think bonded the unity to the fans as well, because I think we could see that from the outside. It wasn't.
The club have played an absolute blinder in terms of that. I mean, if you think how fractured the relationship between the club was and the fans with Mike Ashley, for it to be like it is now, it's just unbelievable. It's like the complete opposite. The fans and the players and the owners and the coaching staff, we were all pulling in the same direction. The whole club was united.
What was hilarious about that first photograph, though, it still happens now, is the reaction from fans of other clubs who think it's absolutely, what are you doing? Oh. And somebody said one of the games where we'd done a lap of honour because we won the game, and it was the going round clap. And I mean, we've done a lap of honour after every game that we've won at home. And people kind of believe it, can they?
Yeah. Okay. So Andrew, what was your favourite moment?
I went with the war flags display from Spurs. So
Why
the first
Spurs
game
in particular.
Sorry, say that again.
Why Spurs in particular?
Well, because that was obviously the first game under the new ownership. Obviously, it was forget, because you mentioned this is not about the game, so we can forget that it was Bruce in his 1000th game and all the disaster.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And he, obviously the guy had a heart attack in the stands and stuff. It was pretty bad. But before the game, it was that the Big River display. Yeah. It was just a sort of a moment of you tried to break us down. You tried to sow disunity. You tried to actually just strip this club of all the life within it, but you didn't. And we're here, and you're not. And piss off.
Yeah. You're right. And and it was the return of War Flags, and they nailed it with the Big River thing. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, a bit sentimental, a bit, but I think we needed it, and it was a classy middle finger.
Yeah. Great way of putting it. Great way of putting it.
To the
I love that. And then, I mean, from there they've gone on to do, and I think I mentioned it when I sent you the thingy in, but just the banners that they've done over the course of the season. I mean, and one of my favourites is the one with David Kelly. Again, it goes back to the Leicester game. Yeah. That was a player from 30 years ago, and the recognition that game against Leicester just was a watershed, because it was his last game when he scored the hat-trick. But the game against Portsmouth where he scored is the one that we all remember from that time. It was just wonderful. I just think it's great.
Yeah.
And again, it was brilliant. It was so symbolic of. It wasn't really just this is the start of something. The Spurs was the start, and the culmination was the Arsenal game, and perfect. Yeah. It was perfect.
Just as a side, everyone should definitely listen to the True Faith interview with David Kelly.
Yeah, good, isn't it? I did listen to it.
Absolutely brilliant. What a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I loved it when he was interviewed on the end of the season video. When he went at the time when we beat Sunderland 1-0. It was not the season we were promoted, but the season before, and he scored a goal, and he called it a spawny arse goal. He just said, "Wow, it was just a spawny arse goal." But I'll take them every day if it means we'll beat Sunderland.
So my favourite moment was Everton at home. The atmosphere then. So obviously the context of that was we just had the international break. We'd beaten Leeds. We just had the international break, and we had 2 back-to-back home games against Everton, then Villa. And obviously Trippier was in the team for the Everton game. And the atmosphere that night was tremendous. And I love St. James's Park under the lights anyway, but it was just great. And obviously we won. And it was just that feeling of, we can do this. We can do this. We're going to bloody do this. Mm-hmm. And we did eventually. But it felt like it built on the Leeds result. We won back-to-back league matches. And the atmosphere in the stadium that night was just tremendous.
And we conceded first that game, and then it was Trippier who went to get the ball from the net, and we went up the other end and equalised. That set a record for the 2 own goals in the shortest amount of time for 2.
That's right. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
Good stat there, Dad. Good stat. Like it.
I read it this afternoon when I was doing my research on it.
Well, maybe if I stop working full time, I could get more stats in. But,
what do you think I do?
You just said you had all afternoon off.
Didn't say that.
Oh dear. Anyway, I don't know what the feeling was there about that one. They're all good shouts.
The guy was right.
I think. I don't know. I like the idea of War Flags against Spurs just being a big, symbolic moment, really. But there we are. Anyway, let's move on to the last award of the evening, and it's Player of the Season, and we were unanimous with this one.
Guess who it is?
Can you guess who it is? But I mean, let's talk about Joe Linton, because we talked about him for a lot of time on this channel, and I started talking about him just as the takeover kind of happened, and I was adamant that he could do a job for us. I was convinced. If you watched him play, he was in those Bruce games. He was actually, I would say, he was our best player in those early games. We were crap, we were rubbish, but Joe Linton was showing signs of like being good. And what struck me with him was his strength and his close control in tight areas. And he was doing that. And it wasn't getting us anywhere because the team was set up so poorly. But like he was consistently taking on 2 or 3 players, quick feet for a big guy. And that's what I saw. And that's why I thought, yeah, he can do this. And actually his distribution wasn't as bad as people were making out. But he had the reputation. And so it took a lot longer for a lot of other people to come around and see that Joe Linton could be good. However, what I would say is I did not think for 1 minute he could become, I never predicted he would become as good as he actually has become.
So he's played 30 starts, 5 substitute appearances, plus the League Cup game against Burnley. So 36 for the season. He's just... And I mean, he would be a good shout for Mr. Consistent as well.
Yeah,
he would 100% actually. Yeah,
because and again, my reasoning with ASM was a slightly higher ranking, and he played as many games. But like Joe Linton is Mr. 7 out of 10 as well, which I love. So his average over the season is just below that 6.8, but. If you look at him, I mean, he had 3 man of the match performances, both Brentford games and Norwich away. So that says slightly poorer opposition, and he's absolutely able to boss and dominate. But he's just it's the transformation, it's the heart of it as well, isn't it? It's not just the fact that you can look at the numbers, that's fine, but actually. He was one of our most consistent performances under Bruce, absolutely, because he's big and he's strong and he can, and even though he couldn't score because he was playing out wide or he was in the wrong position.
I mean, if there's one thing that I wish Joe Linton could get a bit better at is scoring. I think if he could add that to his game.
Do you remember early in the season when he was through and he just like fell over or he hit himself in the face with a ball?
Yeah, on one occasion. I'll never forget the shot he had where he fell down and the ball hit himself in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only
now he's a monster, and he is. And he has scored some goals. That lovely goal at Brentford, for example, just fantastic. And he went and celebrated with the fans. He ran the whole length of the pitch.
Absolutely.
That was a great one.
It is only 4 for the season, and that is the weakness. But that's because, again, you look at him as a striker, but he's not. Clearly not, even if he thinks he is. And it's just that, he's defended, he has, he's pressed, he wins more tackles than anyone else.
I remember the Manchester United game when we should have won. We were the better side. We were so unlucky not to win. But Joe Linton, I think somebody did a sort of a compilation of all these
moments in the game,
and it was just fantastic. He just ran them. He was just bossing the midfield. He was getting the ball back and then running with it. And as you say, and he's big, strong, and he can pass. He's got everything. And you go back to the Norwich game, and when Kieran Clark got sent off, and Eddie Howe played a blinder there. Really, I mean, he might have done it a little bit. He got lucky with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what do you remember who he brought on? Because he had to sacrifice somebody in that game, and he brought on somebody else. I only know it's because I watched it again today.
Did he take Fraser off?
Fraser off, and he brought on central defender.
Surely.
Yeah, Fernandez.
Fernandez. God, that must have been his
Fernandez played absolutely fantastic, and I can't believe that he's never really been in the side since. It's just bizarre, but that's another story. But then he switched Joe Linton into central midfield.
Central mid, that's where he's played most of his games. He's made 18 appearances in centre midfield.
But it's just, I mean, it's a shame for Joe Linton really that he was given the number 9 shirt and the pressure that comes with that at our club, and the fact he isn't an out-and-out striker. It should never have been given the number, and then perhaps expectations might have been slightly different. But I mean, it's such a good story, I love what Mark's saying. You know, since the day he signed Joe Linton, wanted to be loved, and I think what you've got to give him absolute credit for is the fact that he had a crap time. He was being complete. You know, he had a year and a half of just being told he was rubbish. He wasn't good enough. He was a joke figure. 40 million, but he never stopped.
Yeah,
he never gave up.
And with that, it's Steve Bruce and COVID with no fans in the ground.
Yeah,
and so you know, all of that combining, that can't have been easy. You know, and he's Brazilian moving from Germany to Tyneside.
You know, you're in the in England, new country, and you're only young and all that kind of stuff. And I just got so much respect for him, and for him to actually win the official Player of the Season for the club.
Yes,
what a story! That's just brilliant.
And I think that was fairly unanimous from the people as well. I think it was a high proportion of votes, wasn't it? He encapsulates the journey we've been on really this season, Joe Linton, doesn't he?
If it sums it up in a player,
then Joe Linton is the one. Yeah,
it's a
joy to watch. It really has been a joy to watch. And I mean, that header he scored against Brentford down there. You know, when he I was absolute. If he could, I wish we just could do that a few more. I mean, he's such powerful.
He is capable. He just believe in himself in the box.
So of his four main strengths, three of his main strengths are defensive, right?
Yeah.
So his best attacking strength is in the air, aerial duels, but his defensive contribution, tackling and blocking the ball, are real.
Yeah, and when you watch him, he's just impossible to get past. Pretty much, He is. Remember earlier in the season,
the best in the league at blocking the ball.
The reason I said, he can do a job for us is because at that time we needed a midfielder who could be more defensive because we were leaking goals for fun. And I said Joe Linton could be that player. Play a more defensive position.
Because we were saying we needed it. We hadn't replaced the army. We needed that type of big player sitting in front of the back 4, 5, whatever, and winning the ball and playing it to somebody to then go and play it further forward. But it's just been remarkable, absolutely remarkable. But he's such a nice lad as well, and I think that's
really nice
as well to the crowd and to the fan base.
There's a really nice message from Paul here. I saw him in Gateshead Tesco back when he was crap. I spoke to him and he was a lovely lad then. He's only ever wanted to do well for us. So pleased for the lads. We love you, Joe. And I think that's just, we echo that completely.
Someone badly advised him and told him to move to Gateshead. Bloody hell.
Maybe he was lost.
Gateshead Tesco's.
But yeah,
so that as a former local, by the way, just before anyone jumps on that. But
yeah, maybe Eddie Howe got tips from me. I'm claiming that one because I don't get too much right, but I did call I genuinely called the Joe Linton one, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
So yes, very good. So a couple of things before we go. So hang on, I created a thing. I need to show it. There he is with his trophy.
Nice graphic, Ian. Lovely.
That's brilliant.
Nice.
Took me ages that.
I'll tell you what, though, they both dyed their hair with that bleach colour, and it was really hard at times. Sometimes when they're at the other end of the pitch, which one was it, Bruno or was it Joe? But that's maybe just blind.
He lives in Gateshead. Come on,
get your eyes tested again, Dad.
I wasn't even going to say that. I tell you.
No. There's a couple of other things I wanted to very quickly talk about. Why was it? Mark spoke to me earlier on Twitter, and I'm going to have to find it because it's not in my head. No, it might have been on my YouTube channel, actually. Mark, please save me here and type your thing. I'm going to have to go and search because I can't remember what it was. Talk about something else for a minute. Talk about hopes for next season.
Hopes for next season, yeah.
Well, I think if we pick it up on your video from earlier, I would agree.
Oh, that's what it was. No, I've just remembered. It was about that. So my video that I put out earlier today was about what we're aiming for next season. So I think the club are clearly going to aim to try and get in Europe as fast as they can in the league, and they'll target the cups. What Mark said was, do you think is there a chance we have actually possibly overachieved? I even created a thing. I should have remembered that. Did Newcastle actually end up overachieving this season? And do we need to rein our expectations in a little bit next season?
No.
Champions League. Come on.
No, there's always an old saying: you end up where you deserve, really, and we've ended up 11th. But on the form that we've had for the last 4 months, that's where we deserve to be. We've won a lot of games. Now, the question is, will we carry that form into next season? Will we win as many games in a short space of time as we have done? Probably not. But where will we be aiming for? I agree. I can't. When you look at teams who've had really good seasons, West Ham come into this category. They're only 7 points ahead of us. So have we ended up overachieving? No, because I think we've played really well, and the gap for us is obviously the very top teams. That's they're up there. But anywhere from 7th downwards, I think we can give them all a game, and on my day we can beat them.
The gap.
I think top half is what we should be aiming for, and I think. Why shouldn't we aim? You remember, there's always a thing we can be talked about getting beyond our remit, and we're getting too big for our boots. But when we came up in '93 with Keegan, I mean, he said, "I'm banning the word consolidation." He bought good players, and then we finished third. Now, I'm not for one moment saying we're going to finish in a Champions League place, because I'm not.
It is a different world.
It is a different, but we have made a transition already.
Yeah,
we are going to buy better players. You would think in the summer. We've got a good coach because he's proven it. We can just build it a bit more.
So the answer to your question is: did we overachieve? No. This team. And even before the signings, the team that started this season had enough in it to finish mid-table. We had a terrible manager, a toxic atmosphere, and an owner that had gone beyond not caring. It was becoming negligent to a ridiculous level. What the new owners have done by bringing themselves in and then changing the manager with how they have allowed the team to do what that team could do. Yes, they've improved it. And if the team that finished the season started the season, we'd probably finish top half.
Yeah.
There is
we finished third. If you took the last 19 games, the last half of the season, we finished third behind Man City and Liverpool in the form.
What we also know is that over a whole season, it's only, the only teams that have done that kind of level of consistency are Man City and Liverpool, because they both got over 90 points.
Yeah.
What's really...
Hang on, Dad, hang on. So the thing is to say is there's no point in aiming for the top 10 as a broad thing, because what do you get for finishing 8th, 9th or 10th? Nothing. We've got to aim for the top 7.
Yeah.
Finishing 9th in the league is no better than finishing 11th. And what we've got to do is get better than the kind of the easiest thing for us to do with good coaching, some good purchases, is going to be can we finish above Leicester, Palace, Brentford if they're going to carry on, all that kind of stuff. Are we going to finish above those teams? Can we catch West Ham? That's the question. Can we catch West Ham? And West Ham's turnaround came after a bit of consistency with David Moyes.
Yeah.
It hasn't been.
West Ham actually a good example of a team who went from nearly being relegated to then qualifying for Europe very quickly.
If you look at people's predictions for 2 seasons ago, people thought West Ham would get relegated because David Moyes had been relegated before.
He only just survived, didn't he?
He was a bit of a joke manager. He was brought back in for the second time, and actually when they qualified for the Europa League and finished 6th last season, people were amazed. But the transformation wasn't that great. It was good coaching and some good signings.
Which sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
We can do this.
Well, good coaching.
With us,
a lot of people overlook.
First of all, I mean, the big gap. Also,
the gaps get harder to jump the higher up you go.
Yeah, of course
so for us, I would say for us to catch Man United 6th or Arsenal 5th, that is huge. That's 2 or 3 seasons worth of work. To get to Spurs, massive. To get to Chelsea, harder again. And to get to that top 2, a decade.
Well, yeah. And you'd have to consistently improve for a decade.
Yes.
Really. Or 5.
Yeah, and you've got to use that. So can we qualify for Europe next season? We have to, I think.
I can't remember who it was. It might have been on my video earlier today. If you've not watched it, go watch it later. They made a really good point that really we need to be aggressive in trying to get in the top 6 or 7 because the likes of Bruyne and Trippier will want European football and they'll want it quite soon.
Yeah. You see, I think privately the club won't say this. They won't say what their target is. But I watched a video earlier, Ian, and I would agree that internally they will be targeting what Andrew's just said there about we need to aim for European place, whether it be the Europa League, the conference, whatever. I think the other thing is the cups could lead us into Europe as well, and I think that would be something that would be worth going for, and it's about time. I still hold my breath that we will ever win anything. But
I would you want to win cups, of course you do, and I don't think there should be any Premier League teams unless they've just been promoted and they really need to stay up, who shouldn't be aiming for the cups, because you want to win a cup. Of course you do. The truth about the cups is they're really hard to win. Ian said in his video earlier, we got to the quarterfinals a few years ago, no bother, because we had Oxford and teams like that. And then as soon as we got a hard draw,
we struggled to get past.
And that's cup football.
It is.
And Liverpool have won both cups this season.
Yeah.
And Chelsea is the team they've beaten in the final. That says something about the strength that we've got to get to as well.
Yeah, and Paul makes a good point.
I think what you said, Andrew, about the fact that we had a team which underachieved in the early part of the season is absolutely correct, because if they were coached properly, they would be better. I think with how the first thing he did was he's got them fit. He raised the fitness levels, and now we are. And those stats actually, and I think the stats do show how fit we are at the end of games, massively. And I think when you look at the top teams, that's what they do. They can go. They're like machines, aren't they? And I think his coaching is far better than I even anticipated it being, because, I mean, it's amazing. People said he couldn't get, a defensive team, a team to defend. But we've said this on here, haven't we, that we have managed to survive based on good defensive record, clean sheets, not conceding many. And that's built because we haven't scored a lot of goals. If the one thing we haven't been able to do, I think, we only scored 3 goals twice. The Everton game and Brentford. Yeah,
can't remember any others. Off the top of my head.
So that's the challenge.
We built it on being more solid.
Well, we're more solid, but we now need that extra bit of oomph up front. Callum Wilson, if you could keep him fit for 20 or 38 games, would be a fantastic player. But we know he's not going to be
fit. Everton and Norwich. We did it 3 times.
3 times. Oh yeah, we won at Norwich 3-0, didn't we? Yeah. But I think so. The task for us in the summer is to increase our goals.
100%. 100%.
That's where we will get better.
Yeah,
and we got it.
Pick up on that comment on the screen. Okay, the League Cup is the best, but the top clubs do bother with it, because Liverpool won it this year. Man City have won it 5 times in the last 6 years.
That's right.
I think what he means is in the early rounds.
But this is what I'm saying about cup football.
But then when they get to the quarters and semis, they start playing their.
And this is what I'm saying about cup football. If you draw Man City, so again, West Ham this year knocked out Man United and Man City in the League Cup in the early rounds, because they turned up with junior teams.
Yeah.
So But then I think did they lose to Liverpool? I think it was in the end. They had a really hard set of draws. But that's the point.
What you want is you need to get lucky. You need those teams to draw each other early and knock each other out. That's what you hope for. Then you hope you get a bit of an easier run, and then you only have to play a semi-final.
Well, we just had a season when the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup have been the same game. Chelsea-Liverpool, Chelsea-Liverpool, both won by Liverpool on penalties.
Ultimately, I think that tells a big story about the latter stage of that competition.
Yeah.
It was Liverpool.
We could break that. We could break that in time. I
don't
know about the next season. I think we'll have a good cup run next season, but whether we can actually break that or not. Really interesting. Loads to talk about as we go through the season. I've just sorry, I thought I'd saved a message and I haven't. Someone was asking, am I going to be doing live shows in the off season, basically? And the answer is I'm going to. There'll be plenty more stuff coming on the channel. But there's so much to talk about, and it's very exciting. And it's just been like I said it earlier, but just to wrap up, in January, I really wanted this season just to end and it be over. But then when it came to it, it was so fun. It got so fun, didn't it? In the end, this season, it really was.
Wanted to go to the games and watch us on
going again. Yeah. So listen, there's lots of people who've joined us tonight and asked lots of questions about different things. Tonight was kind of all about the awards and stuff. But all those questions we'll answer another day, another time, on another live stream or in my videos. So thank you very much to both of you for joining me this evening.
It's been good.
Great. Yeah, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in, watched. Please hit the like button if you haven't already, because then it spreads to more people, which helps the channel a bit. So that'd be great. And thank you very much. And I will leave you with a picture of our player of the season.
Player of the season.
See you later.
Yeah. Good night.
Night.